I'm India Brown,
And I'm Sidney Wilson.
and we are two Southern gals making it in the big city world where we both work on a Broadway show.
And this is our podcast, Social Cues, a show where we put away our show scripts and stage blocking.
And have real conversations about how it feels being professional performers in a lucrative industry.
One topic at a time.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Social Cues.
Hey there, I'm Sidney.
I'm India. How y'all doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah?
You know, it's officially fall. It's my birthday month.
Come on, birthday.
See my cardigan. The Halloween
hat.
stuff is up. I'm a
Yes.
scary movie kind of girl, so this is my time of year. I'm thriving.
I can't. No, I'm not with the horror movies. I'm too sensitive.
Every time
But
of the day. So
yeah.
my husband, he hates it. He's like, oh my God, you watch the same old scary movies every day. Like, you ain't never seen it.
What's your favorite?
I got a few. I like Chucky's, Child's
Oh.
Play. I like Halloween, Michael Myers. I like Freddy Krueger's.
Oh my
Nightmare on Elm Street.
gosh.
I like, I don't really love Jason, actually. I'm going to put him in the lineup. But I
Okay.
like the Scream, and I like Saw. So
Okay,
all
yeah,
of
you're
I'm a
an
scary
old
movie kind of
school.
girl.
Okay.
The old school ones, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Okay, I'm good.
Looking
yeah.
cute.
Thank you.
We stay coordinated.
I know
colors.
it's never.
When I
I
tell y'all
promise
we
it is
don't
not
plan
planned.
this.
It's not like I show up and I'm like,
What
we're
you
like the
think,
Spider-Man me, and it's like,
Like,
looking at you, looking at me.
I know. We just didn't think. You doing good,
Yeah,
though?
yeah, I'm good. This writer strike ending has been very
Yes.
exciting for the writers.
So, yeah, they reached a tentative agreement.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. Praise
And they
God.
so the picketing has stopped,
Mhm.
and then they're allowed to come back to work, and it looks like a lot of what they wanted, if
They
not
got it.
everything.
I
The
was gonna
agreement
say,
is
looks like they kind of
right
came
and
out
tight.
as champions.
Yeah,
for sure.
they got
Like,
what they-
it's very
what they wanted.
thorough.
Yeah.
So yeah, congratulations to everyone who's a part of the writer's strike. I pray, keep my fingers crossed for the actors strike.
SAG-AFTRA.
SAG, yeah, they
hopefully
get the
we'll
same
follow.
rights.
Yeah, follow behind.
Because the business model is changing. So, yeah, they had to figure out a way to try to accommodate that because you got to get people paid. You know?
Right.
People got lives. So, congratulations to that.
And some of our favorite shows are going to be coming back. You're
I
saying
know.
SNL's coming back.
Yeah,
and
next week. Oh, my
production's
gosh.
going to start.
It's
for
bittersweet.
new
It's like,
things.
I'm glad that they had that moment. But, yes, I'm happy to have them come on back.
Yeah.
because we've been thirsty for the content.
Yeah, but it's good. I'm glad they fought the good fight, because this AI, technology and software and stuff was really about to take over.
Right.
So I'm glad that was a hard stop, and now they got what they
And I
deserve.
think they found a way to kind of use both.
Yeah, like I was reading, if they
Monitor.
want to use it, then as long
Yeah,
as
it's
it falls
optional.
in policies, yes, but nobody's
It's
forcing
not
anybody
mandatory.
to.
Right. of
Yeah,
course. So that
so-
works out. That's really good.
So congrats, good for y'all.
Yes. y'all
Okay,
should be
let them
proud.
know what we got going on this
Oh my
week.
God, today's so special because we actually have our first interview in studio today
Crazy.
with the amazing Haley Weber. She is a physical therapist that we work with closely, and she got a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, she knows the body
Yeah.
and how to work it out.
So if you need to know performer or otherwise, it's a lot of good information.
Yeah,
So
not even just for performers, like even athletes or even just, regular occupational pedestrian type of movement.
pedestrian.
So, pedestrian people. I'm
Just
gonna
your
say.
everyday, whether
Your
you
everyday person.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so she had a lot of great gems to drop. So I'm excited about that.
yeah.
So we're going to get into it in the next segment. Y'all stay tuned. So we are here on our very special interview. We're talking about physical therapy and body maintenance. We have the wonderful physical therapist, Haley Weber here. Thank you for
Hello, I'm so
joining
happy to be
us.
here.
She is in studio, which is so
Yes.
special.
I know, we're like
First-
actually across
Yeah,
from each
she's
other.
here
Yeah,
with us.
it's so cool. We're doing our first in-studio guest. So let me, before we start, give a quick bio. Haley was born and raised in Georgia and went to UGA for undergrad, where she majored in psychology and minored in music, then went on to receive her doctorate of physical therapy from Georgia State University in 2017. Haley joined the NeuroTour physical therapy team immediately after graduation and has been working in performing arts PT ever since. She has been working as the staff PT for various Broadway shows since 2017. Haley grew up in dance, music, and theater and loves being able to continue being involved in performing arts through her career. She now lives in Brooklyn with her wife, Sarah, 8-month-old daughter, Nora, and 2 cats, Oliver and Louis. Welcome, Haley.
Thank you.
Woo!
Yay. We're
Okay.
here. We're doing it.
So how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing good.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Excited to start off. I wanted to ask, like, based off that bio, I feel like a large part of your life post like doing theater and as a younger woman, a large part of your life has been about PT, and I'm wondering what inspired you to step into that lane.
Yeah. So I kind of like how I got in PT in general, and then performing arts. You know, I grew up doing all of the stuff you mentioned, and then, a little less so in college just because it wasn't like my major and things like that. But I was able to minor in music just specifically so I like wanted to take chorus. And I was like, if I'm going to take chorus anyway, I might as well get all those credits and put them towards something. And then I was in an a cappella group as well in college. And then afterward, when I got into PT, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. Most people, the typical route is, that I grew up doing such and such sport, got hurt, got better with PT, that, they got me back into it. So now I want to do that. And then they do like exercise sports science as a major and then go to PT school from there. And then, that's kind of the typical trajectory. And then I was the like oddball out in class. It was like, I grew up doing like dance and theater and music. And
so you never played sports?
I mean, I've played a bunch of sports as a kid, but like a season of each. The longest one I did was like swimming. I did that like in the summers, but other than that, I did like a season of lacrosse, a season of basketball. So yeah. And then when I was in high school, I was doing I was like a trainer for the football team, which in high school just means you like are the water girl. And I like wrapped some ankles, and that was pretty much it. They had an actual PT that did any of the injuries at that point. Right. But so that was kind of my first taste. And then in college, I was a part of this group called UGA Miracle that raises money for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, which is like the big pediatric hospital in Atlanta. And that was kind of my big thing outside of a cappella in college that I was involved in, and just really made me fall in love with that hospital and like pediatric hospitals in general, just how they like try and have such a like positive environment for such a scary time. So that kind of led me to be like, okay, I want to work at CHOA. What do I want to do? I was like, I didn't want to necessarily go to med school. I didn't want to be a nurse. So I was, looking into other opportunities. And that's when I came back on PT and was like, oh, that's like, that would be a way that I could kind of get involved. And then when I was in PT school, the first semester we had to go to this convention, and there was a guest speaker, and, they start introducing her, and they say, she worked on Broadway for shows like War Horse and Billy Elliot, and, are listing off all these shows. And I was like, wait, what? And they were like, and now she's a PT at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And I was like, what? Like, you are living my life. And I actually out loud said, oh my God, that's my life. And then of course the woman in front of me stands up and goes on stage, and I was mortified because she heard me like fangirling her career. But so she spoke, and I met up with her afterward, and we ended up getting dinner afterward, and she told me all about, because she worked for Neurosport, the company I work for now. Oh, wow. And so that's kind of how I first heard about it. I had never heard of performing arts PT, but once I heard it, it's like something clicked. It was like, oh, I can still be involved, even though I'm not doing performing arts anymore, I can, like, this is still another way I can, be around those, because like those are just all my people. In high school, I was part of the chorus crew, like that was always been my people. And so so yeah, it was like a cool way of a full circle moment. And, I think still eventually I'd love to do the pediatrics. It's like the long-term goal once, once I'm done working with performing arts. But for now, it's been like a really fun way to be a part of this really cool community in New York.
Absolutely.
So
that is so cool. I would have never, like, that is such a crazy story.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You assume that most people come out of sports.
Right.
And but to see
usually
that there is a way to meld it.
Exactly.
Is beautiful.
And that's why, and the longer I've been in it, the more I've realized, like, on both ends, like for PT, how there's PT for nearly anything, so any background that you have, even if it's not like in sports, there's going to be PT needed for it in some, exactly. Yeah. And then same with performing arts, for people who grow up and are doing performing arts, but aren't necessarily like the best of the best, and aren't necessarily like the ones that are like going on to, pursue this dream of, Broadway and things like that. A lot of times, at least for me, it's kind of, that's the only thing you think of as a kid as the only thing, but there's so many other avenues between PT and crew and stage management and just like so many other things that people just don't think of. So
So really quickly, I'm gonna go off topic for a second. I know you are a Southern girl. We
Yes.
both are. Southern
yes.
I'm from Georgia, and Sydney's from Virginia. So we posed a question to one of our other guests who was from Georgia as well.
Okay.
And I want to ask you, it's not written down in our notes, but I am curious, what was your experience moving from the South to a big city, or like the North?
I loved it.
You loved it?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was great. Yeah.
Wow.
I-
Immediately?
Yes.
Good stuff.
No, I've always loved New York. I mean, my mom and I have been coming up to see Broadway shows since I was a kid. Like, we would, come up for the weekend and like get the crappiest hotel and just like go to TKTS, get a matinee show, leave the
Nice.
matinee show, go right back to TKTS, get, just
Oh, I
like
love
get
it.
3 in a
Hammer.
weekend and then head home. Yeah, I've always loved
So
New
you knew what
York,
you were doing
and
as soon as
yeah,
you got here.
But
It
I
was-
wonder if that makes the difference, because I had only taken one big trip,
Me
like my
too.
junior year.
Me too.
So I wonder if that, because even what Adrian is the one who we asked, Adrian Walker, and she was like, it's like a lot, and it was a big shift. But I think for people who haven't been able to or haven't done those small trips and been a
Right.
little bit, like I think I visited the city maybe like 2 or 3 times before I like moved full time, versus like if you're coming and you're in Times Square like seeing
home.
shows,
Right.
you're like, oh, I know what this is, like I know kind of what it's about. But
Yeah.
You got
I think
it.
also for
crazy.
me, it was such a like, it was a big like shift in my life, because that was like while I was in the middle of my like coming out process and things like that, and so telling family and friends and things like that. So I think it was helpful to, because that was like later in life than a lot of times it is for people,
Yeah.
and so it was nice to kind of like be in this big city where there's this huge community,
Mhm.
and also you're not around all the people who have known you since a kid, who like
Mm.
have those like preconceived ideas of like who you are as a person, like to be able to be starting fresh while I was also like understanding this new part of me, and then it was
Yeah.
amazing. I was able to meet
That's
my
what-
wife, my now wife here, and
yeah.
so I think that also made it. I think there's a lot of people who, if they move from the South to a big city, it's like overwhelming. But for me, it was like
Yeah.
this brand new start. And
You like, bye,
Shed
y'all.
your skin.
Bye.
That's what like the stereotype of New York, I feel like, is like,
Yeah.
you come here, it's so much going on, you can be who you want to be, like
Exactly.
you can have a fresh start because it's so much going
Yeah.
on.
I knew like 2
Um,
people when I moved here, and so one person from my company, and then another like old friend who like we weren't close, but so I was literally starting like brand new. Yeah.
That's so
Work.
good,
Yeah.
though. You made it last. and doing
Yeah,
great.
made it
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so back into the
Yes,
interview
yes,
questions.
yes.
we had to have that
I know,
sidebar
right?
though.
I had to know. So, okay. So, you hear about what us as artists, like we're around, the therapy world all the time because we're always trying to find ways to restore our body. We
Right.
have the little gadgets and gizmos,
Yep.
balls, like TheraBands, all the things in our little bags or whatever we bring to work. But I realize the rest of the world is not really hip to, therapy,
Right.
Or, self-myofascial, anything.
Yep.
So it was, I guess, the Olympics, the 2016 Olympics in Rio, where
Right.
Michael Phelps
Yep.
had all the cups,
All
those
the
marks.
bruising marks.
And the world
on his
figured it
body.
out.
Yes.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
feel like that was when the world was like, oh,
Yeah.
y'all are doing this?
Yeah.
Like, what are those bruises? So yeah, I felt like that was when the world got hip
Definitely.
to like all of the different therapies.
I think so. And like, especially too, with like, there's more now, like there's Theraguns that are just easily accessible for people to buy,
Yeah.
and things like that, which I think
Mm.
is like a whole other tangent, but I think that can be a great thing, having these modalities available for people to use on their own.
Mhm.
I also think sometimes it can be a hindrance just because, you're able to get it without the proper training or proper instructions, or it might come with an instruction manual, but who's really reading that for their
Yeah.
Theragun, when you're thinking about how much power you're actually having and applying to your muscles at that point. I think it can be a great tool for people to have when they know how to use it properly.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing I'm always just warning people, if they're getting one, I'm like, yes, but you're going to bring it in. I'm going to show you how to use it first,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the whole world should know, I'm a big on like, no matter what you're doing, whether you're moving a lot or having to sit at a desk for, 8 hours a day,
Mhm.
I think that like pretty much anyone could use PT in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, of course. They don't have to restore
So
the body,
yeah, I
for
love
sure.
that's why I love that you guys are doing that, to, both for performers and non-performers.
Yeah. Education is
Yeah,
key.
education and seeing how it can help.
Yeah, so that falls into my question. So you have all these different methods, and we can go down the line.
Yeah.
You have cupping, you have TheraBands, you have the reboots, you have the gun
Yep.
that you mentioned, you have icing and heating. So for me, I always get overwhelmed when I actually find myself like aching or approaching maybe some potential injury. My first question is, what do I do first? Like, when is it best to use these different methods, and what are the benefits of
Right.
using each?
Yeah, so I think, it's definitely different depending on what is going on with your body. as performing artists, one thing I see a lot is the like overuse type injuries. So, you know, the thing where it's not running off stage and you're like, oh, while I was on stage, I felt this one thing tweak and now it's hurting. It's, you know, I'm doing 20 kicks on the same leg 8 times a week. And, you know, you might not necessarily feel it at some point, but you start feeling like your hips feel like kind of out of line. Now your back is starting to bother you. So, you know, I think for those non-acute injuries, the more like overuse, that's where the preventative, like PT and all of the preventative things like warming up and rolling out and stretching and strengthening and like all of those things are going to help to decrease that. And you can also, you know, if you have access to a personalized, you know, a personal PT that knows what you're doing, what you're feeling, that can give you those specifics to each body. Because obviously anything I'm saying today, I have to give my caveat. Anything I'm saying today can't be taken as like medical advice for anyone listening, just because I haven't assessed or know what you're doing. But, you know, yeah, we can definitely, I'll just kind of go through each of the ones that you mentioned and talk about when those things, in my opinion, from what I've seen, are the best.
You activate and do those.
Exactly. So for cupping, we'll start with, since we were talking about Michael Phelps. You know, now everyone, knows those like stereotypical circle bruises. They want their bruises. I joke with people, I'm giving them their temporary tattoos, you know, and you know, I think the whole idea of that, which a lot of modalities are kind of going for the same benefit, but in different ways, which is when you have any kind of injury or, you know, muscle irritation, anything like that, what you're going to get for healing, or what you need for healing, is a fresh influx of blood. So all of the like healing blocks that you need, or building blocks that you need for healing your muscles are in that fresh blood. And so the way that cupping tries to get more blood to the area is literally that like negative pressure from the suction. So as we're sucking out the air, either with, you know, the little gun thing, or, you know, I'm sure some people have seen where they do it with fire, where, you know, you hold fire in the cup and then you take the fire out and put it on, and when the air cools down, that's creating a negative pressure to suction up your skin. Or with the gun, you know, that's much safer for use in, you know, a backstage or a clinic environment that we use most of the time here. But that negative pressure is literally pulling blood flow to that specific targeted area. And therefore, by bringing more blood flow to the area, you're getting all of those good building blocks that you're needing to help kind of facilitate that healing process. Gotcha. So cupping, I think, is great for when you've got, you know, specific like trigger points or areas of like overuse that you are noticing a lot and you're trying to release and you just are having a hard time releasing. Because it also can help with your fascia layer, which is, you know, you've got fascia that goes your entire body between your muscles and your skin. So a lot of times you can be digging into a muscle a bunch and the muscle might have calmed down and is back kind of in its normal alignment the way we want it to be. But the fascia is kind of stuck. I think of it kind of like saran wrap. Once it gets crunched up, it's kind of hard to straighten out.
So that's like a roll up.
Yeah,
exactly.
What is fascia like made? Is it fibers?
Yes, it's kind of like a it's not. It doesn't have a blood flow. It's just kind of this like fascia. I mean, it is fascia. It's like almost kind of thinking of it more like a ligament than a tendon. So a tendon has blood flow, a ligament doesn't. But unlike a ligament, which is we think of as like more of like a rope, the fascia is just this super thin layer, like I mentioned, of like saran wrap is the best thing I can think of, because it's just super thin and it can just kind of get adhered when you've had a muscle tight for a long period of time and it's not been moving. It can kind of adhere to it. So that's where the cupping, the suction kind of helps to lift that off of the muscle as well and get it to where it's gliding over the muscle as we want it to again.
And that's good to know, I think, too, for listeners like even who aren't performers. I think a common thing that a lot of people get is plantar fasciitis. And so like even before I started performing full time, I was working a catering job and I was walking like hours and hours and hours and my feet would be so sore. And I'm like, I can't get them to, I'm like trying to stretch them, trying to massage them, but rolling that ball. And my mom, and I'm like, I'm hearing this crunching. Like, what is this crunching? Like I'm feeling, she's like, that's the fascia. You gotta work that fascia. But so it's like, even if you don't have a major injury or something like a performer might, like this is day to day, you know, good knowledge for day to day too.
Exactly. Just maintenance. So that I would say is like what the benefit of cupping and like what you're kind of going for and when would be good for that. And then TheraBands I love as a backstage tool because they're small, they're light, you can have them backstage, you can have them in your dressing room, you know. If you're on tour, you can throw them in your, you know, bag. You don't even have to put it in your big trunk. You know, you can have it in your carry-on. And it's just so versatile. Like, obviously, I think TheraBands sometimes get a little bit of hate from just, that it's not more from the people who want to be lifting big weights. Cause they think people who are used to lifting big weights and they're like, what is this rubber band going to do? And I think it's important to realize that although it might not be used so much for like heavy weightlifting type strengthening, it's really, really good for your like scapular stability, your core stability, things like that. And exactly, stabilization, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But I think it's just great because there's different levels and you can tie it in so many different ways. I could probably, if you gave me any body part, like, figure out some way. You might look really silly doing it, but you can use a TheraBand for nearly every body part, depending on how you tie it, where you put it, where the, where you have it tied to. You can have it tied to a door jamb or tied to your foot if you're using your arm. It's just so versatile. So that's why I love TheraBands, and they're just really good for like warm up. They're also great for, which I'll talk about a little bit later too, is the idea of warming up before a show. But then a lot of times when you're off stage for a bit and then you're just like kind of sitting for 20 minutes at your station, and then you have to go right back out and go at 100%. So kind of doing these like little mini warm-ups throughout the show. And I think the TheraBand can be great for that because, you just right before you go on, very specific to what that scene is going to be for you. If you're doing, lifts, you use the TheraBand and do some overarm lifts with the TheraBand first to kind of fire up those muscles so they're ready to go when you get on stage. So yeah, I think they're great for that purpose, is that like mini workout or mini warm up between scenes in the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. What's up next?
Yeah. So let's see. Next we got the Reboot. So the Rapid Reboot is one of the common brands, but it's pretty much just a pneumonic compression boot. So what you're getting there is, well, first of all, I think personally it's really good to use right after a rehearsal, a warm up, or a rehearsal, a show, anything like that, a workout. There's not necessarily a bad time to use it, but I just think that you do get like really good, all the benefits best from like right after a big workout. So the idea of what we're trying to get with that is, you're using pressure, and it pretty much is, squeezing up your legs, or they've got it for your arms and things like that too. And that's going to help to enhance your blood flow, which, we mentioned with cupping, the benefits of having fresh blood flow to those muscles that have just worked. It's also going to help to boost the lymphatic drainage, which is going to help to decrease your inflammation. So by getting, our whole lymphatic system, when we have swelling, that's, we want to get everything toward the center of us, from, if you have swelling in your hand, you don't want to push it toward your hand more. It doesn't have anywhere to go. You want to push it up toward your shoulder, and then it can be drained like out of your system through your trunk. Same with your feet. That's why you elevate your foot. You want to get the swelling toward your hips so it gets, so it's able to drain out easier. So yeah, that's going to pretty much just be manually doing that and like kind of getting that lymphatic system moving. And then finally, it's just doing general tissue and lactic acid mobilization. So, you hear about lactic acid buildup, which is going to give you fatigue or soreness like the next day. So this is just kind of helping to decrease that by not having it just be stagnant once you're done working out.
Yeah,
so
definitely reduces some of the soreness. Or
Definitely.
when I notice I am really sore, I like go get the Reboot because I'm like, I need.
So,
it's much easier. Obviously, it's a very expensive machine, not something that's accessible to everybody, but I do feel like it feels so much better than trying to like work those muscles. Like, when you're sore and you're like, I know I have to break it up, but it hurts
it's too
so
much.
bad.
Yeah, it's hard to do it to yourself. You need something else to do it to you.
Yeah, so when it just squeezes,
it kind of does it all
releases, so I like that machine a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
And then ice and heat.
Ice and heat. Yeah, those are our last two. So ice, is a little bit, sometimes I'm curious what different people who are hearing this are going to think of my answer, because there is a little bit of back and forth right now with ice, actually.
Okay.
So in general, the one thing that is 100% true that you can't argue necessarily is that ice is going to decrease the inflammatory process. It's going to slow it down. Right. So, most people have heard of, the RICE situation. If you like sprain your ankle, the rest, ice, compress, and elevate. So that's kind of been the go-to for so long for people after an acute injury. We were talking about how the inflammation process is going to help to heal, because by getting more blood flow, that's going to help the muscles to heal themselves. Right. So what's kind of coming out now is, okay, well, if that's good for us, why are we decreasing the inflammation? So that's kind of where there's now a little bit more research kind of, a little bit more research coming out saying that you don't want to take anti-inflammatories. You don't want to necessarily ice right after an injury. So I've seen some of that. I can understand where both are coming from. So, all I can do and all I can say is what I've experienced, in my 6 years of doing PT. And what I have found is I think that it is most beneficial in the very acute stage of an injury. So like day 1 or 2 after an ankle sprain or something like that, in an area where you're worried about swelling. Because although a little bit of swelling is good and it's going to help the inflammatory process move along, if you have too much swelling, it's going to end up decreasing your range of motion. Because, if you've ever had a big ankle, you can't, it's literally blocking the motion. And so you need that motion because that's going to help healing. So you don't want too much swelling for that reason. And it can also inhibit muscle firing. So if you've got swelling around a muscle, it's not going to be able to have that full activation like we want it to. And again, muscle activation is something we want in the healing process so you're not getting stuck, without that range of motion and without strength.
Gotcha.
So
with that, when icing, about how long would you recommend?
No more than about 15 minutes. This is one thing that I wish everyone could, know more, because I think a lot of people think the more the better for icing. Yeah. But there actually is something in your body. It's like a reflex where once you've had ice on a specific area for too long, your body kind of thinks it's going into hypothermia. So it ends up increasing the blood flow to that area to try and save it. So, like if you were out in the cold for a long time, at first everything's going to come down, but then your body is trying to, save itself, save that limb, that's just our body's response. And so that actually does the opposite of what we're trying to do. So if you are icing, you always want to have a layer between the ice and your skin, because there is such that I've seen it. The ice burns, you don't want to be burning your skin, and you don't want to go more than 15 minutes at a time. And then take some time off, like an hour or two later, you could do a little bit more. But yeah, definitely 15 minutes at a time, and definitely most in the acute stage, the first day or two after an injury, I would say. And definitely keep an eye out on like the research, and everyone do their own research and see what feels best for you. But because that one definitely is not a cut and dry answer anymore.
So it sounds like rice is out.
Yeah, rice is out. There's a new thing people can look up I've seen called Peace and Love that I don't exactly remember all of what they stand for, but it's
too long.
The words peace and love. They all mean something.
Yes, I think so. I don't remember all of the research, but pillow. And I know it's talking about, that one's more focusing on increasing your movement and actually using it rather than immediately after an injury, like you're like wanting to load it. I think that's the L for love is loading it. Yeah, it's a long one. So everyone, do your own research, but just know, also everyone's body is going to respond differently. So, some people ice might be like wonderful and really helps with their like big swelling, and other people it might just kind of slow down their healing. So I think to each their own a little bit for that.
Really quickly, how do you feel about like the ice baths?
Ice baths, I think definitely are something that can be really helpful just for like, everything I said that ice helps with for a specific area, like an ankle sprain. It's just kind of doing it for the whole body. So it can kind of help to calm down, the inflammation of your body in general that, is, and the lactic acid, kind of some of those things that we talked about with the compression boots, it's kind of doing similarly, where it's just kind of calming everything down, cooling everything down. Can help with the, soreness the next day, things like that. But again, those are not as accessible as, throwing an ice pack on one specific area. It's hard, especially backstage. A lot of times there's not space for that. So and then the final one we're going to talk about is heat. So heat is great to use as part of a warm-up tool, in general, which again, we'll kind of get into more later. Obviously, we want to warm up our bodies before we're throwing it into, being on stage or doing anything in the performing arts world. So heat you can use as like a literal tool to, before you do the active warm up, while you're, if you get to the theater early and right before you're going to go out on stage and do your warm up, grab a heat pack. If you've got a specific area that is often like tight or restricted and things like that, to, just help to get those muscles a little bit more pliable. I like to think of our muscles kind of like silly putty. So, when you take silly putty out at first and you try and like squeeze it, it's just really tough and it's hard to kind of work through. But once you've worked on it and it gets warmer with your the heat from your hands, then it gets super stringy. And that's kind of how our muscles work as well. And so, by putting heat on it, you're going to be kind of one step ahead when you start that active warm up. So that is kind of like a good time that I think of for using heat. And then also it can be good for more of like a muscular pain versus more of an acute type pain. So, if you're just like this muscle in my neck just keeps like catching and just feels really sore, like that is like a more of a soreness feeling is when I would use heat. And versus like the ice was when, more of like we talked about that more like acute pain, and swelling and things like that. So
good to know.
Yeah.
This spans across not even just performing arts, obviously, but all different areas
your
of
sports
life.
and workouts and things like that.
So you brought up a good point too, like occupational type of injuries as well. Like just
Definitely
simply sitting at a desk all day can definitely, inhibit some sort of
exactly
injury or something. So it's important for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, we at our clinic, I'm right now I'm working with a show, but our company also has a clinic near Times Square, and it's mostly performers that we see, but there are a bunch of people who have nothing to do with the performing arts world or non-performers in the performing arts world. So makeup artists, stage crew, management, things like that. Yeah, and and especially people who aren't at all involved in performing arts and just kind of like stumble into our clinic and then see all the Broadway posters and like finally realize they're like, oh, these are like all performing arts people.
Yeah.
They'll sometimes be like, oh, like I just sit at a desk all day, and you're like, no, because just as much as our body needs help from moving a lot and doing the same repetitive motion, our bodies also were meant to move. So for people who are sitting at a desk from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., sitting on a computer, there's so many things that PT can be helpful for there as well.
That's the repetitive movement.
That is their repetitive movement, is this, forward posture and using their hands. So like you talked about like carpal tunnel type things and neck issues and back from just sitting, our bodies are meant to move. So that's why, going back to it, I'm like, I could talk about it forever. How I like, give me any profession, give me any person, and I could give you like 5 reasons why they need PT.
I've noticed that, and I feel so like my eyes have been open really to PT and to all the people, because I will walk through my day-to-day life and be like, Dad, you could probably use PT. Anybody could use PT.
Yeah.
And I think about my mom's a PT too. She does home health, and she works with elderly patients. But when I was younger and I was possibly exploring my time in the medical field and possibly in PT, I was thinking about all the different avenues. And so I know what she does, obviously, with home health, obviously, like you mentioned, sports and now performing arts.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if between those professions and the people that you see within those professions, if you notice differences and similarities between mostly I'm thinking sports and athletes versus performers, like the different types of people that you see, bodies, injuries, what are those similarities and differences?
Yeah, so both with like the way the physical bodies look and the injuries that we see, my answer is like yes and no, because first of all, I would argue that, performing arts is a sport. So like I would kind of put it in that category anyway. But and I will stand strong with that. Yes, dance is a sport. But then also, so if you think of more of the, typical the sports, including like a ball, like what people think of more as sports versus like dance, gymnastics, things like that, there's differences, but also there's going to be differences between every sport. So, you look at like a linebacker versus a swimmer versus a baseball player, like a pitcher, all of those bodies are going to be so different within each sport. And then even within a single sport, different positions. Thank you. Yes, I'm not a sports person. I always end up, I'm like, oh yeah, your uniforms. Or I say your costumes. I mean your uniforms. But yeah, so it's just so different depending on the type of muscles that you're using for your specific repetitive movement and the mobility that you need and the flexibility that you need and the power that you need. It's just so different per sport, per position. And then again, through performing arts, a ballerina, professional ballerina versus, the performer that, I was with the show Stomp for 2.5 years, which is just like big, heavy, high power stuff. Yeah. So those bodies are obviously going to be different than the professional ballerina is going to be different than, I worked with Music Man, which is more of the kind of old fashioned musical theater kind of dancing. And so therefore those kind of like those bodies looked different than the Stomp bodies, looked different than the Lion King bodies, looked different than, every show I've worked with, it definitely, there's a different body that you can kind of see based on, and you're like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. So that's what you do on stage 8 times a week. And then same with injuries, you asked about if you see different, patterns kind of with that. With different shows, there's kind of our like little lingo that, a PT will, be like, oh yeah, there's this, like puppet neck or, whatever, like, you different with different shows. If with a show that's working, it has the same repetitive things, you're going to notice that show has similar injuries. And then also something that I have no idea how, like, what the science is behind this, but I swear there is something to things going in waves. Like at my show I'm with right now, like I'll see ankles for like 2 weeks straight. Every single person is coming in for ankle. And then a month later, with the same people, the same stage, the same puppets, all of a sudden everyone is like, my neck. And so I'm like, I have no idea what is with that, but exactly.
Tell me about your neck. I'm doing that too. Like you would think if we were planning it, you'd be like, do something different.
Yeah, no.
Like everybody go with.
Well, we're not lying.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, it kind of like goes in waves, and then definitely it's very specific to each sport. Within a sport as well. With swimming, you're going to see a lot of shoulder and neck. Because of the big range of motion that you're using with your arms. With football players, you are going to have some more like acute type injuries because of the like high impact, and et cetera. Each sport is going to have its kind of main thing that you're going to see, but then there's always going to be outliers. And yeah, each body is going to be different and is going to handle that load for that sport performance, whatever it is, differently than the body next to it.
Gotcha.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it is. For the average person on the day-to-day routine, like what would be, I don't know, 1 to 3 of the exercises you would recommend for like a full body strengthening, and something for maintenance for a typical person. What would you recommend?
Definitely. So I think that to me, the most important part of the body for anyone, whether you're sitting at a desk for 8 hours or you are doing a 2.5-hour Broadway musical 8 times a week, is the core of your body, which, the core, having stability and strength in your core is what's going to allow you to use the mobility of your extremities with a lesser risk of injury. So, most people, they think of their core and they think of their abs. And so they think of like crunches and things like that. But even deeper, you've got a muscle called your TA, transverse abdominis. And, that muscle, it's not so much it doesn't show much of an action when you're engaging it. So people kind of like shoo it off because the exercise for it is so simple and they're like, there's no way this is doing something. But it's also one of the probably top 3 exercises that I give people. They roll their eyes while I'm teaching it and they come back 2 weeks later and are like, yeah, yep, you're right. Yep, I feel it. And so, we're really wanting to, for that, you're just like laying on your back and you're really thinking of engaging like the deep core, like almost if you were like holding in your pee or something like that, rather than so much thinking of a crunch, like belly button to back, is really kind of that, the deep stability through there. And so by building that up and like building up your hip strength, that's going to allow you to, do all kinds of, lower extremity things with lesser risk. And then, and so for hip things, I mean, things like a clamshell, I think, it is a very basic one. And a lot of people roll their eyes at it. And I will roll my eyes at it if you're just doing clamshells and not ever moving past that. 90s, but yeah. But I think it's a good, just like, I don't think it should be anyone's top, goal to just get to a clamshell. But I think it's a good one to just kind of check in with your hip rotators. And, a lot of people have that internal rotation in their knees when they're walking or running. And by engaging those external rotators of your hips, that's kind of just helps to, again, fire up the muscle, kind of cue your brain into, oh yeah, we should engage these today, And then I like to think of the area kind of between your shoulder blades as the core of your shoulders. So same kind of idea when we're thinking of like our typical core is like the more stability we have between our shoulder blades, the more we're going to be able to do these crazy arm movements, whether it's, swimming, you're doing a big like backstroke, or you've got a puppet on your hand and you're having to do big arm movements. You're going to feel so much more stability and you're going to have less risk of injury if you have a stable base that's coming from. So for things exactly, it is your foundation. So, things like with the TheraBand, like just external again, simple external rotation like we did for our hips, but with the, our arms just holding a band, palms up, holding on, squeezing your shoulder blades down and back, and then opening your arms out to the side, like rotating out and just going as far as you can without kind of like chest bumping to help out, because that's not actually using those muscles anymore. You're just kind of feeling like you're getting further. So, I think doing something for your core, something for your hips, and then something for like your shoulder blades are the really good start. And then I think obviously, if you have the ability to get to a PT to see your body specifically, or your, what your repetitive action is, they're going to be able to give you, from there, okay, this is what's going to be really important for you. But
Nice.
yeah.
I want to jump back to the performer side of things.
Yes.
I'm wondering about, or if you can explain to the viewers with us, the risks or maybe downsides of working with an extremely automated stage, with things like having a rake and different automation and things like that, and how to kind of prevent injury. I mean, we talked about injury prevention a lot already, but in combination with that specifically.
Definitely. So yeah, a lot of these shows have all kind, if they might have a movement that like the choreography itself would be hard enough to do on like a nice springy flat stage with tennis shoes and workout clothes and nothing else on their body and no mic packs, like that already is a lot of times gonna be something that's repetitive and could cause overuse, and so it has cause to kind of focus on your body and do preventative work. And then you add in the rake, the turntable, the steel stage, the puppets, the mic pack in your wig. All of these things are going to, change everything. It might change it slightly, but when you're doing it 8 times a week, it is going to build up. So kind of some of the ones that you specifically mentioned. So when you got a rake, which for anyone listening, if you aren't sure what a rake is when the stage is like on a hill pretty much. And so sometimes, most often, it's where the upstage, so the farthest from the audience, is going to go higher, and then closest to the audience downstage is going to be lower. Sometimes though in shows, there might be a rake to the side. It might be, where the right side of the stage comes up. I've worked with shows like that. So you're kind of having to shift your frame of thought with everything I'm about to say. But in general, when you're on a rake, you can think of just if you were standing on a hill, how your weight's going to be kind of shifted forward. So now everything in the back of you is having to work harder to hold yourself up. Cool. And then any muscle that is downstage, so on the lower part of the rake, is going to be stretched. And then any part that's on the upstage part, so the part that's, behind you, is going to be shortened. Mm-hmm. So for example, your ankles. If you are just standing straight ahead on a regular facing downstage rake, that means the front of your ankles are going to be stretched, and then the back of your ankle or your calves are going to be shortened. Right. So an important thing to do, like preventatively for that, would be, you're going to want to strengthen whatever is being lengthened for long periods of time. So like strengthen the front of your ankles, and you're going to want to stretch the area that's being shortened for long periods of time. So like calf stretch. And then, it's important to think, if you do have that typical downstage rake, but you're facing stage left all the time, that's going to be different, because now you're leaning toward the right and you're having to hold yourself up to the left. And now the right side of both ankles is the part that's stretched, and the left, so it kind of takes some like teasing out of like, okay, where am I? What am I doing? And that's again where, like, if you have someone specific that can sit down with you and talk through like, oh, okay, this is your track, these are the things that I think you should do preventatively to counterbalance the fact that you're standing pretty much on a hill 8 times a week.
It's crazy how much we take for granted how hard our body is working. Like,
exactly.
You don't feel everything powering up and activating, but your body.
And even if it's a small rake, even if it's not like a huge hill, like I've worked with some crazy rakes that are like actually like a huge steep thing that's more of like an actual hill. But then even ones that are just a couple degrees, again, that's still a subtle shift in your weight distribution is going to affect your body. Right. And then things like a turntable, I think some things that are really good to be mindful of with that are your coming back to the core strength, always coming back to the core strength, and your balance and your lower extremity strength and agility. You're wanting to think about, you might be walking on flat stage, and then all of a sudden you're having to, while it's moving, step onto or jump onto or dance onto a part of the stage that's moving. So you need all of those things. You need the core to help keep you up. You need the balance, obviously, because it's like if you were to step on a train that's moving, and you need that agility your body needs to be ready to have that quick change in direction, where it was just stagnant and now it's moving without you, So all of those things are really important to keep in mind when you are dealing with a rake. And then the last one I was thinking of was, with puppets, which isn't necessarily for the stage itself, but just with a show, anytime you're having any kind of puppet or prop, really thinking about how that's going to affect it. If you were to hold your arm straight out in front of you just by itself, you could probably hold it for, a couple minutes before you're like, oh, this is starting to get fatigued. You take a 1 pound weight super tiny, and you hold out in front of you, and like after a couple seconds you're going to start feeling fatigued. It's not that the weight is heavy, but because of it's like a long lever arm, which we're getting into all kinds of physics now, but the further away you're holding something from your body, the heavier it's relatively going to feel. So even if you have a really small puppet or prop that you're having to hold out for a long period of time, really thinking about, again, that stability and having that shoulder strength to hold it there and not end up kind of shrugging up your shoulder because you're trying to just hold it up. So any kind of prop or anything like that, or mic pack in your wig that's going to pull your neck in a different position, or a headpiece, or just a big wig. All of those things are going to affect your neck. So, it's just all of those little things that you can kind of think of, and we're like, what is that making my body do, and how can I counterbalance that when I'm not on the stage? Because there's only so much we can do. Like as the PT, that's the thing. It's hard sometimes. People come in and they're complaining about the same choreography piece or the same prop or the same costume, and I'm like, there's only so much I can do. Like I do not have creative liberties with this show. I cannot change your choreography. I cannot change your shoe. I wish you could wear tennis shoes, but no, you have to be in these heels. Like, and so what we can do as physical therapists with performing arts is help you figure out the best things you can do when you're not on stage to counterbalance that. Right. And it really is, it's hard, but it's just part of the job, is taking time outside of when you're not on stage to get your body as prepared as it can be for when you are on stage.
Yeah, that's the big thing I was feeling. The overall, I feel, is balance. And I think you can't help it. It's human nature to compensate. And once you realize and you walk, and then it's like, how did I get here? Yeah. And it's like this whole time you don't realize. So I think strengthening and knowing to balance whatever's being stretched, then you need to exercise that. Whatever's being shortened, you need to stretch it. Like, so knowing what you're doing. And that's like being able to be aware too, and getting the rest and stuff you need. So you're able to be like, what am I doing this show? What is my body doing? Like, really, not just how do I feel when I wake up? Like, how am I going through day to day? So I know like my little habits.
You gotta know the body. Sure.
And even like, I mean, this kind of, it's related to PT, but not as much as people would, think. They think more of the like the working out and the physical aspect, but also, just when we're talking about being prepared for being on stage, the hydration and the nutrition, and like really, I mean, that's hard when you're working when your work schedule is, 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and then, all day on the weekends, and you're at the theater, and food is expensive in Times Square. I'm talking specifically for like on Broadway, but it's, you're not wanting to eat out all the time. It's expensive. So, trying to meal prep and, do all of these things. And, you'd be like, it'd be great if I could get up at 8 a.m. and be fresh and do my workout and prep my meal. But you didn't get home until after midnight, and you had to then cool down or do an ice bath. And so you don't get to sleep until 1. So definitely finding that balance of like sleep and rest and nutrition, what you're eating, and preloading your hydration, because you don't want to just be chugging water during the show. You want to be doing that throughout the day so that you're already hydrated as you go into the show.
It's probably already too late by the time.
Exactly. Yeah. By the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So you really want to be kind of keeping on top of that during the day. Also, you don't want to be peeing the whole show. So you want to get all that taken care of ahead of time, so you're not having to. Obviously, you should be drinking throughout the show as you are losing, as you're sweating and losing moisture that way. But you don't want to be chugging 5 water bottles throughout the show.
So you mentioned fitness and working out. So segueing into my, my final question. With fitness, because we do have a lot of Broadway performers who go to the gym like 1,000 times a week. They look great. What would you suggest for people who actually want to incorporate fitness and going to the gym? What exercises would be optimal for them, for maintenance and, sustainability as performers? Would you suggest like strength core and HIIT or cardio or all of them? Like, what would be your go-to?
I definitely think that kind of an all of the above kind of situation is the most important, because when you really think about what's involved in performing arts, strength, you're sometimes lifting other people, you're lifting props, you're having to do big jumps. So obviously you're needing strength. You're needing, obviously cardio, because you're on stage, like go running and singing. And then, you're, as far as high intensity interval training, you are sometimes on stage going all out for a 5-minute number, and then you're off stage, like we mentioned before, for 20 minutes, and then you're right back on stage and you are going 100% for another huge number. And so, having that ability to have your body be able to kind of rev up and then come down and then want to rev it up a little with that mini warm up that I talked about, but then, getting right back to it. So, from the performers I've worked with over the years, I feel like the ones that often have the least amount of injuries and are just like feel the best and feel the most comfortable in their body when they're doing the show are the ones who incorporate like a large variety of working out.
Yeah.
So, and then, definitely, like I said, always coming back to that core. So, I love Pilates as a good option. A lot of performers love to do yoga, which yoga is also a great thing. I'm not saying no to yoga. I often will tell my performers who, do yoga multiple times a week, trade out 1 or 2 of those a week for Pilates. Just Pilates is going to, because it kind of gives you that similar kind of like mental aspect as yoga has, but it's giving a little bit more focus on the stability rather than the strength, because a lot of performers are actually hypermobile. So, we don't want to just be sitting in a split or just, kind of hinging on our joints because our muscles aren't strong. They're just kind of like hanging out there. So
you can stay there all day.
Exactly. You can stay there all day. And again, that's not a bad thing, but just kind of trading that out a couple times a week for something that's more stability based. And then definitely, working on that cardio so you're able to, run. I remember I was doing it in high school. We had like a kind of like the Tonys, but for high school musicals, and my show was up for it, and I was part of the opening number and closing number of the like award show, and we did "You Can't Stop the Beat," which is the most chaotic, the highest energy, and you're having to do all this choreography and sing that song like that high, and it's like 15 minutes long. And so I just remember like running on my treadmill, singing at the top of my lungs, "You Can't Stop the Beat." Like, because you have to get that point where not only can you sing what you have to sing, but you can sing it while you're running, while you're dancing, all of that. So,
I'll seen Beyonce do that.
Oh yeah. No, anytime if you've got the your own treadmill or just the, you just want to on your own and no one else has issues with it at the gym, just belt out while you're on the treadmill. Anytime you can make a workout be more specific to what you're having to do on stage to have you prepared is going to be like a great thing in addition to all the cross training that you're doing.
Got you.
That's incredible.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. For our final question, what online resources can we consult to get in-depth workouts and guidance on how to maintain optimum health? So there is a website through my company that it has this ability to like have this subscription, but it's a free subscription where you can kind of like build your own warm up. So this is something I, throughout this, I definitely wanted to come back, and I've kind of touched on it here and there, but like warm up, in my opinion, is one of the huge components of, being a performing artist and keeping your body healthy. And so what this online platform does is it kind of takes these big parts of the warm up that should be incorporated. And it kind of gives you the option to kind of pick and choose a couple of exercises from each. And then and you can also pick how long you want it to be. And then it makes your own kind of like workout video from that. So, if you picked for cardio, you wanted to do like jumping jacks and high knee runs. And then for dynamic stretching, you wanted to do a lunge with a reach. And then, I don't know, I'm blanking now, like a triangle lunge. You select those, and then there are little videos that have been recorded that all get put together in that order and just run coherently through to make a workout for you. And in it, they're explaining what to do. They're explaining, common mistakes that people make or adjustments that you need to make. Obviously, it's not one-on-one, but it's really great for people to either, if you want to have your own specific warm-up if you're the type of person who likes to do their one warm up and the same thing every single day based on their body and based on their track. I have seen, I think that there are two different kind of ways. And that's what I'll always tell people when I'm talking about warm ups, which I'm very passionate about, obviously, is I think that is something that is more person dependent. So I think that for some people, they do like to have that. And I think that that's an okay thing if having the same warm up for your show, if you're doing the same track over and over again, and that's your warm-up for the show. I think that warm-up should then be different if you're going to work out at the gym or if you're going to do, some other kind of fitness. But if you've gotten your warm-up to be very specific to your body and track, like if you do a bunch of jumps, that means that you've got some heel raises as part of your warm-up. Like if you've worked with someone and really gotten it to be really specific for you, I think that can be a great thing for people who like that, just like, I get to the theater and I do this and I do this and I do this and then I'm ready for the show and now I'm in it because I did, I did my warm up and I'm
in it now.
Got it.
But then there's also people who are like, I will go crazy if I do the same thing every
That's
single
me.
day. Yeah. And, you know, especially since you're doing the same, most of the time, it's the same show every show. You know, they like to have that different aspect
Yeah.
for, you know, like something
one thing I
different,
can
you know.
control.
Exactly. So then sometimes with people for that, we'll maybe come up with 3 different warm-ups that are good that they cycle through. Or I just make sure they have a really good understanding of the different components that you want. And then give them some examples, and then they just kind of go with the flow every day, and they just kind of pick something based on how they're feeling. And you know, obviously you do want to pay attention if you do have the same warm-up every day. If you're feeling particularly tight in your neck, you know, maybe do your normal one, but add some extra neck stretching or things like that. But yeah, I think it's kind of dependent on the person, and it's also dependent, which is something we haven't really talked about at all, which is a huge part in the performing arts world, is obviously the swing life. You know, so we've talked a lot about the idea of just jumping in and you know, doing the same track over and over, and you know, knowing exactly what your track is. As far as, you know, on the rake, I'm always standing this way, but you know, any swing knows you have no idea. You might not do the same thing every day. You might not know what you're doing until it's halfway through the show. And so, you know, I think that that's another time when it's important to really understand your body and what each of your tracks include. And you know, I worked with one swing who, for each of his tracks, we had a warm up for each track, because he liked the consistency. And so that was something that was hard for him about the swing life, was not knowing, you know, that like he wanted to come and just do the same thing every single day. And it wasn't that. So the way that we were able to kind of like bring him peace and that like feeling of consistency was, okay, well, every time I'm doing track A, I do workout A, and that has been specifically formulated to work with that track. And every time I do track B, so even if there was that like moment of getting the text and being like, oh, I got to get together, they could like just get calm and like get their kind of associate that warm up with that and kind of help them get in the mindset of that performance, because I always do it. That's just an important part in general to think of that is often skipped over, is we generally think of, you know, performing arts as doing that same exact repetitive thing over and over again. But between either having a swing in a show that is the same show every night, but their, you know, role is different each night, or whether or not they're on is different. There's also improv shows that is going to be slightly different, that you have to be, you know, prepared for. And then even there was one show I worked with where it wasn't even necessarily as a swing, but just the way that the show worked, people rotated through which role they were that night. So most people knew 2 or 3 of the roles, and so they were always kind of doing something different. And so, you know, just kind of keeping in mind when we are doing warm up, if you are one of those people who are doing the exact same thing every night, then you might be able to do that just one specific warm up. But if any of those other things are happening for you, if you're a swing, if you're in those kinds of shows that are different, kind of making sure that the warm up that you do is specific to what you're doing that night, not necessarily to you know, what you might typically be doing. So yeah, but then as far as the resources you were talking about, so if you go to www.neurotour.com, NEUROTOUR, that is where you can get the subscription I was talking about. That's free, that you just sign up, you put in your email, and can create your little, you know, warm up. You know, there's obviously all kinds of things on social media these days, fitness, you know, warm ups and on YouTube and things like that you can find. And you know, I think that those are kind of like the Theragun that I was talking about, how like it's great to have. It can also sometimes be detrimental if, you know, because some people might not necessarily have specific qualifications to be showing what they're showing, or it might work for them, but for your body, you don't, you know, if you don't know that specific exercise is bad for some pain that you're having, you know, so that's obviously just the part that you want to be cautious of with anything online. And even with the neurosport thing I was talking about, you know, that's for a general body. It's not specific to having any certain injury. So, you know, I just would always say, warn people, you know, if you're finding something online that works for you, that's wonderful. If you find anything online that's causing any pain, or, you know, you're noticing any flare-ups, or you're too sore to do the show or anything like that, to check in with a professional for your specific body, and they might be able to give you either alternatives or just a completely different resource or something like that specific to your body. But you know, I do think it is great that people, you know, because a lot of people do get bored doing the same thing. So I think it's nice that there's new exercises I hear of all the time. You know, I'll hear other PTs say some random word, because, you know, we always have these weird names, Supermans and Michael Jacksons, and you know, like all the weird names for our exercises. So I'll hear something and I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, there's always, I'm like, Jackson, you're like going up on your toes, but you're keeping your knees bent. So that's going to work your soleus
my
instead of your
God.
like a regular heel raise works your gastroc. But if you keep your
Got
knees bent, that works
it.
your soleus. And it looks like, woo, like a Michael Jackson.
Interesting.
But yeah, so there's new exercises out all the time that are focusing on different things. And so I think that is one good thing about like having social media and having access to it online. Just, with that word of caution of, everybody's different and everybody's going to respond to things differently. So yeah. This has been good. I'm glad that you guys are getting this info out, because I think it's all important information, like we said, for performers who are a lot of times lucky to have PTs either backstage or access to before they go out on a tour, they might have an assessment or something like that. But some performing artists don't have that access, and non-performers, like you said, like don't even realize that they might need PT. And one last thing on that I'll say is there's it's different per state, but PT over the last many years has been working on something called direct access, which is where prior to this, to go to PT, you had to go to a doctor and get a script for PT before you could go to PT. You could not walk into a PT office and just have an evaluation because you knew that you sprained your ankle or you knew you were having neck pain. You had to go to that doctor first. And that they ended up changing the PT program to a doctorate. So you have to have your doctorate in physical therapy now, specifically for this reason, so we can be working toward direct access, where people are able to come in off the street knowing they need PT, not needing to wait weeks to get to the doctor, and then once they get a script, weeks to get to PT. It helps to kind of get people in quicker, and for those things that they know they need PT for. So every state's different. Like in New York, it's I believe you can go 10 times to PT without a doctor's script, and then or 30 days, whichever comes first. And once you hit 30 days or 10 visits, then you have to go to a doctor to get a script, just to kind of make sure that there's not something deeper going on that's not musculoskeletal. But that's why we have our doctorate now, and we learn about in PT school we learn about cardio, like heart things and lung things, like all of these non-cardio or non-musculoskeletal things to look out for that are red flags, so that we can be the ones to refer to a doctor if we need. If someone comes in and they think that it's a shoulder pain, and we're like, actually, I think this might be heart. I think you need to get to the doctor. I think you need to go to the hospital. We have that training now, which I think is also another huge thing that has helped boost the PT. I don't want to call it a fad because it shouldn't be a fad, but like getting people into PT is because they're now able to. They don't have to go through all of these steps just to get to a PT. Exactly. So if anyone in that that whole 10 visit thing is perfect too for someone if they are starting a new performing arts gig or a new show or anything, and they're just kind of wanting to get a check-in on their body. I wish that we had to in the US had to get like annual PT assessments, like how we go and get an annual checkup or anything like that. I think it would be really helpful just to kind of, because it's always easier to catch something before it happens and prevent it than it is to fix an injury afterwards. So take advantage of PT, and if you are starting something new, go in for like a couple of visits before you get started and get assessed. And especially if it's a PT that works with performing artists that knows those specifics, because that's very different than a 9-to-5 office worker, can work with you on a good warm-up, can work with you on, okay, based on your posture or based on this, I'm noticing some weakness in this muscle and you're going to need that for XYZ in the show, so here's some exercises you can do. So I think that could be a great way to use that without having to go to a doctor. Obviously, if you need to go to a doctor, you should go to a doctor. I'm not saying that, but it's just nice that it is more accessible to people now, without an extra copay and an extra all of that. Yes, I am technically, I have my doctorate, so technically Dr. Haley. But
cool. I think that is a brilliant idea. Like safety first, because you're right. Some people just assume it's one thing and it can be
exactly. So that's why it's important for us to have those skills. For if, and same thing with backstage. If a lot of times it's an acute injury, but sometimes there's other things going on that, like, if you're, that's a whole other thing. But the quickness of getting that call backstage that someone's either gotten hurt or that something else is going on, and you're having to assess super quick backstage to be like, are they safe to go back on stage? Do they need to go to the hospital? Do they need to go to the doctor tomorrow? Like, what is going on? And so we've got all of those skills to be able to know, this is PT, just stay with me, we'll take care of it. Or like, I want you to get an X-ray or an MRI, which we can't prescribe for you to get that. So we'll just send you to a doctor from there. But
Give
Thank
it up.
you. Thank you.
Yes,
Of
thank you so
course.
much for being here. Yes, it is incredibly important for us to cover this because we're fortunate enough to have physical therapy on site, but like you mentioned,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't. And
Yeah.
the reality is there's so much information out there. How do you hone in what's specific?
Exactly.
What do you need? at
Exactly.
the time of need. So
Yeah, of
yes,
course. Thanks
thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much for kind of clarifying
Yeah.
some things.
Awesome. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you, Haley.
So do you want us to
Oh,
find you?
sure.
Where can we
I
find you?
am on Instagram as HCW2625. And yeah, that's my like main one. I don't have Twitter or anything like that. So, but yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
And then yeah, my company is Neurosport and Neurotour. They're kind of sister companies. So we work a lot with performing arts. So yeah, awesome.
Yay.
Awesome.
Of course.
Thank you, Haley. Wow, that was really, really great.
I know.
I
it was
cannot
good
believe that
you.
we had our first in studio, like,
I
and it
feel
went,
so
it flowed
hyped.
so smoothly. Because if y'all knew, last week we tried, and
We
the
did.
technical, it was not working, and she was kind enough to just be
She
like,
was
"How about
so
I just
nice
come
about
and
it.
show up?" And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, great.
Yes, we appreciate you, Haley, for that. Like you're 100%
So yeah,
amazing.
professional. Like if you, the way she
Yeah.
just spit and has so much knowledge.
Yeah.
So
For
yeah,
everyone, not
Yeah.
just like the particular industry she works in.
works
like,
in now. Right. Yeah.
So knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So thank you, Haley, for joining us. It was so cool. I feel official now. Like,
I know that we've
ooh,
had
we
an
our
in
studio
person.
person.
Yeah. Make sure to follow her socials.
Yes.
She tagged, and check out that website too. I think that's
it
really
sounds
going to
like
be
it's gonna
helpful.
really helpful. Like you can kind of pick and choose whatever exercises you want for you. So
Mhm.
yeah, it sounds pretty thorough.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. So that's
All
it
right.
for us today. We're gonna see you guys next week.
Yep. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell for notifications for every time we release an episode. And don't forget to tune in on Apple and Spotify to listen to the podcast.
That is right. And y'all remember, always make your stage cues, but remain social. We'll see you next time.
Social Cues is hosted by India Brown and Sydney Wilson, produced by Dale Brown, and music by Isaiah Young.
Find us on social media at SocialQ2023 on Instagram and SocialQs2023 on TikTok.
Don't forget to subscribe to our page and follow us for notifications of new episodes.
Until next time.